What just happened to Claressa Shields doesn't just shift the temperature of this whole saga, it incinerates every excuse anybody had left for her behavior. Because the moment those alleged messages with Nigeria hit timelines, 3 different storylines collapsed into one giant pile of evidence, and every single piece of debris points back to the same name nobody wants to say out loud. Remy Ma. Yeah, that's where this is heading, and trust me, by the time we walk through every layer of this, you're going to understand why the internet stopped calling it a feud and started calling it something a lot heavier. Something that smells less like competition and more like a fixation that grew teeth. Strip this entire situation down to the bone and look at what's actually underneath, because the surface version everybody keeps repeating isn't the real story. The real story is a pattern. A loud, screaming, impossible-to-miss pattern that's been forming for months, and Claressa herself accidentally pulled the curtain back when she hopped online talking about needing distance from people, calling the folks around her snakes, ops, untrustworthy. Sounds heavy, right? Until you realize the energy she described matches her own footprint frame for frame. The accusations she keeps tossing at others read like a mirror talking back to her. You can't aim that kind of language outward when the receipts keep landing in your own lap. That's not deflection. That's a confession wearing a costume. Shalita Savage spotted it before most. She came through with a breakdown so clean it felt like she had floor plans to the whole operation. And her core point detonated something important. The fixation Claressa appears to carry toward Remy isn't subtle anymore. It's structural. It's the foundation everything else is being built on top of. Because somehow, if you stand near Claressa, you're not even allowed to like a Remy verse, repost a Remy clip, or admit out loud that the woman shaped an entire era. That's not friendship rules. That's a loyalty test designed around one specific person. And loyalty tests built around one name are never about competition. They're about something a lot more uncomfortable. Now pull back another layer and examine the wreckage of contradictions, because this is where the math really stops adding up. Claressa was visibly heated when Alicia Baumgardner brought Lil Kim out during that co-headliner promo. Lil Kim, a literal living monument, walks out, and Claressa's whole face dropped like the floor disappeared. But fast forward a few weeks, and suddenly she's bouncing around participating in the Lil Kim challenge like none of that ever happened. Same Kim. Same icon. Different convenience. Then there was the Cardi B moment, when Cardi shouted Remy out on stage in front of thousands, and Claressa reportedly couldn't contain how that hit her. Yet now, sitting in Cardi's likes, swimming through Cardi's interactions, attached to anything Cardi adjacent. The behavior keeps flipping based on what serves the bigger mission. And the bigger mission, according to everybody watching this unfold, keeps circling back to one address. Papoose, meanwhile, looks like a man who finally figured out how to monetize chaos. He doesn't appear bothered, doesn't appear shaken, doesn't appear ashamed. Because from a pure visibility standpoint, this entire storm has been a launch ramp for him. Every blog mention, every comment section eruption, every viral screenshot keeps his name oxygenated. Remy hinted at this energy long before the public caught up. She basically warned everybody that some people will trade reputation for relevance any day of the week, and right now Pap is showing the entire blueprint of how that trade works in real time. Credibility took a backseat. Attention grabbed the wheel. And he's flooring it. But strip everything else away and look at what Shalita posted, because that's the document that decoded the whole situation. She mapped out Claressa's psychology with a precision that made the timeline make sense. According to that breakdown, this is exactly why none of the rumored side situations seem to rattle Claressa. Not Cadilla. Not the credit repair woman. Not the random names that keep getting whispered. Because in Claressa's internal scoreboard, those women aren't competition. They're background characters. The one woman who occupies real estate in her head is the wife. Remy still owns that mental square footage, rent-free, every single day. And in Claressa's mind, somehow, being attached to Pap reads as a victory over Remy. That's the engine. That's the whole motor. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now let's get into the screenshot that turned the temperature up another 50 degrees, because this is where things stop being theory and start looking like evidence. One of the alleged text exchanges making rounds shows a back and forth between Claressa and Nigeria, and the energy in those messages is something else entirely. Allegedly, it kicks off with somebody saying, "You an op, stop texting my phone, weirdo," and Nigeria firing back, "You the op." Then Claressa allegedly comes through with a paragraph so loaded it could power a city block. She's reportedly saying she doesn't have to hate on anybody broke, ugly, delusional, or mentally unstable before closing it out with "Biop, I'ma show you." That last line right there. That's not somebody who's unbothered. That's somebody marking territory. Nigeria allegedly fires back hard, calls Claressa ugly, admits she may not have the same bank account but says her mindset is wealthier than the numbers Claressa loves to wave around. Then she goes nuclear and says nobody can break her spirit, and that the screenshots only show how Claressa really feels behind the curtain when the cameras shut off. Then comes the caption that made everybody's jaw hit the floor. "My name Miss Jenkins, and you ain't heard nothing from me," with a sunglasses emoji. That's the kind of line somebody drops when they have 8 more screenshots in the drafts folder. That's not a closing statement. That's a warning shot. But pull back even further, because the part everybody needs to circle is what Nigeria allegedly posted afterward. This is where the entire narrative pivots on its axis. She basically said she doesn't need any of Claressa's so-called fake friends defending her, and claimed the entire fallout started after Claressa allegedly ran back telling her yes men about their private conversations. Then she doubled down with this line, "Tell it all since y'all already know everything." And right after that, she swore on her life that the actual reason their friendship ended was because she asked Claressa a single question. One question. Did she think Papoose was still messing around with Remy? And the second that question hit the air, the friendship was over. Read that again. Slowly. The friendship didn't end over money. It didn't end over loyalty. It didn't end over some big betrayal. It ended over Remy Ma. According to Nigeria, that question alone is what triggered Claressa into building a villain edit around her. Suddenly Nigeria became the problem. Suddenly Nigeria was getting slick remarks any time Remy's name came up. Suddenly the relationship had cracks that didn't exist a week earlier. And to put the final nail in it, Nigeria made it crystal clear she's a real Remy fan, called Remy her idol, and warned people not to swallow every narrative being shoveled online about her. That last part hit different, because it confirmed something a lot of viewers were already suspecting. The anti-Remy whispers floating around weren't random. They had a source. So now the obsession allegations aren't sitting on theory anymore. They're sitting on documented behavior. They're sitting on alleged texts. They're sitting on patterns that stretch back months. And once you connect those dots, the picture that forms is wild. The random crashouts in comment sections. The sudden New York trips at suspicious moments. The constant orbit around Pap. The carefully timed posts. The reactive energy whenever Remy has a moment. All of it traces back to one center of gravity. And critics are now saying this isn't about Pap at all. This was never about Pap. Pap is the bridge. Remy is the destination. That's why so many people online are now calling this nasty work. Because if the goal was simply to date a man, that man is technically available enough to date in peace. But the moves don't match a peaceful relationship. The moves match a campaign. A long, drawn-out, multi-platform campaign designed to position herself in Remy's mental space, in Remy's industry lane, in Remy's cultural footprint. And that's where the energy stops looking competitive and starts looking deeply personal. Because competition has a finish line. Fixation doesn't. And the receipts keep stacking. Last night, Remy posted something simple. A thank you to fans for supporting Yuff and Lion. Just gratitude. Just love. Nothing inflammatory. Nothing aimed at anybody. And almost immediately, like clockwork, who pops up online with an attention-pulling moment. Yeah, you guessed it. Claressa. Right behind Remy's 10.7 million follower energy, here comes another attention grab. People started clocking the timing instantly, because social media doesn't miss patterns like that. Within minutes, Claressa dropped the Lil Kim challenge clip and pushed it heavy across every platform she could reach. A clip that was already filmed, already edited, already prepped. So critics are now asking the obvious question. Why did that specific timing matter so much? And once outlets like the Shade Room reposted it, the conversation flipped. Even the people trolling Claressa in the comments still gave her the engagement she needed. Because in attention economics, hate clicks count just as much as love clicks. The mission still landed. The spotlight still moved. Remy's moment got eclipsed. Mission accomplished. That's why a lot of viewers are saying Claressa needs the back and forth more than Remy does. Remy doesn't post about Claressa, doesn't reference her, doesn't engage with her name. But Claressa's content engine seems to spin faster every time Remy's name floats in the air. That's the imbalance everybody keeps pointing at. And the parallels go even deeper. People are now lining up the moves side by side, and the similarities are too aligned to be accidental. Even this whole Records Network situation has viewers drawing comparisons to Remy Network and asking why the architecture keeps mirroring so closely. Because every time Remy gets a positive moment, here comes a countermove from the Pap and Claressa side that conveniently pulls the spotlight back. Cardi shouts Remy out at the concert, and within hours Pap is reposting Cardi B concert clips from the This Is 50 platform out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. Viewers are sitting there like, why now? Why this exact moment? Why this exact content? Why this exact reaction? The timing keeps telling on itself. Then came the wardrobe parallels, the visual parallels, the lifestyle parallels. Folks online say Claressa studied every detail from Remy's diss track rollout. The energy, the visuals, the styling, the body language. Remy steps out at the Cardi concert draped in designer. Shortly after, Claressa appears head to toe in Gucci. Remy references rolling around in a two-seater. Not long after, Claressa debuts one of her own. Coincidence is one thing. A pattern is something else entirely. And the internet has officially classified this as a pattern. That's why the obsession allegations refuse to die. Critics are saying this stopped being admiration a long time ago. It crossed into imitation. The fashion, the hairstyles, the jewelry, the designer references, even the lanes Remy already carved out for herself, all of it being stepped into one move at a time. First, it was music aspirations. Then reality TV whispers. Then networks and ventures that seemed to echo Remy's blueprints with the serial numbers filed off. But Remy supporters keep raising one undeniable point. Remy Network was built around Remy and her co-founder, standing on its own without latching onto anybody else's relationship for fuel. That distinction matters. Because one structure is independent, the other structure leans. And that brings the conversation right back to the question everybody keeps asking. Why does all of this still circle back to Remy? Why do the rumored outside women not seem to register on Claressa's radar, but the wife occupies an entire wing of her mental house? Why does the divorce never seem to actually finalize despite years of public chatter? Why is the energy so loud, so consistent, so targeted, so personal? The answer a lot of viewers keep landing on is uncomfortable but logical. As long as Remy still legally holds that title, the entire mission feels incomplete. And as long as the mission feels incomplete, the noise will keep escalating. But here's the part that flips the whole frustration on its head. A lot of viewers are saying if anybody has the right to be upset, that anger should be aimed squarely at Pap, not Remy, not anyone defending Remy, not anyone enjoying Remy's catalog. Because according to the way many people read the situation, Remy had already emotionally walked out of that relationship long before any of it became public theater. That's why she addressed it. That's why she pulled the curtain. She was done. The signs were already there. Pap allegedly broke, allegedly couch surfing, allegedly entertaining outside company, while the relationship behind closed doors had already flatlined. So the question keeps echoing. If that's the case, why is the heat being aimed at the woman who already left the building? And that's the contradiction the internet won't let breathe. Because if Pap is really the prize, then claim the prize and keep it moving. Build something. Stand on it. Stop borrowing other people's silhouettes. Stop staging photos that mirror somebody else's brand. Stop reacting to a woman who hasn't said your name in months. Stop letting your timeline run on Remy fuel. Because every time you reach for relevance through her name, you're admitting hers carries more weight than yours. That's not a win. That's a receipt. And the receipts keep multiplying. every Cardi repost, every Lil Kim challenge clip dropped at suspicious hours, every designer fit that just happens to echo a look Remy wore the week before, every network announcement that just happens to rhyme with Remy Network, every comment section appearance, every sudden New York visit, every alleged text message swearing she's about to show somebody something. It all stacks. It all compounds. It all writes the same sentence over and over again. And the sentence reads, Remy still has the keys to this entire narrative, even when she's silent. That's why Nigeria's alleged revelation lands so heavy. Because she didn't just leak a friendship breakdown. She handed the public the origin story. The friendship cracked the second somebody dared to ask whether Pap was still entangled with Remy. That single question detonated the entire bond. Which means the topic isn't just sensitive. It's untouchable, off-limits, restricted airspace. And topics that sit in restricted airspace are never neutral. They're always loaded. So when Claressa hops on social media talking about snakes, ops, untrustworthy people, the public is no longer reading those words at face value. They're reading them as projection, as deflection, as a smokescreen designed to reframe a narrative that's already slipped past her control. Because everybody can see the alleged texts. Everybody can see the timing patterns. Everybody can see the imitation chain. Everybody can see the comment section behavior. Everybody can see the carefully orchestrated content drops timed to overshadow Remy's wins. The smoke isn't covering anything anymore. The smoke is the signal. And Pap, sitting in the middle of all of it, looking like a man who confused notoriety with legacy, refuses to address any of it directly. He lets the chaos run because the chaos pays. He lets the speculation breathe because speculation streams. He lets the disrespect fly because every blog post extends his shelf life by another week. And while he's busy cashing in on the cycle, his actual reputation keeps getting buried under it. He didn't build a brand. He rented one. And rentals always come due. Meanwhile, Remy keeps doing what Remy has always done. Mothering, building, releasing, standing, existing on a frequency that doesn't require constant reaction. Her silence isn't weakness. Her silence is structure. Because somebody who has already lived through the worst version of public scrutiny doesn't need to argue with anybody operating beneath her altitude. She lets the receipts do the heavy lifting. And the receipts are doing overtime right now. That's why this entire situation feels so different from a regular celebrity feud. There's no balance to it. There's no equal exchange of jabs. There's no two-sided rivalry. It's one woman moving in absolute stillness, and another camp generating constant noise around her name. And in attention economics, the loud one usually loses the long game. Because volume fades. Pattern recognition doesn't. And the pattern around Claressa and Pap has now been cataloged so thoroughly that no amount of damage control can rewind it. The alleged texts are going to keep circulating. The timing receipts are going to keep stacking. The imitation comparisons are going to keep going viral. The Nigeria revelations are going to keep echoing. And every time Claressa hops online to deflect, project, or pivot, another layer of the case builds itself in real time. This isn't a moment. This is a documentary unfolding live. And the audience already knows how the third act reads. Because at the center of every twist, every text, every timed post, every designer outfit, every network announcement, every comment section explosion, every supposed enemy, every alleged op, every cryptic caption, every Lil Kim challenge clip dropped at midnight, every Cardi B repost, every New York trip, every public meltdown disguised as empowerment, every paragraph aimed at the wife, every screenshot Miss Jenkins is still allegedly sitting on, the same name keeps echoing through the chamber. Remy Ma, Remy Ma, Remy Ma. And no amount of noise, no amount of imitation, no amount of staged victories is going to erase the fact that the woman who allegedly haunts this entire narrative hasn't even had to lift a finger to stay in the center of it. She's not playing the game. She is the game. And everybody else is just orbiting around her gravity, pretending they're not.